Meet the Robshaws. Brandon, Rochelle, Miranda, Ros and Fred.
Let's go!
For one summer, this food-loving family is embarking on an extraordinary time-travelling adventure to discover how a post-war revolution in what we eat has transformed the way we live.
That is just amazing. Look at them.
Britain has gone from meagre rations to ready meals at the touch of a button in just 50 years. But how has this changed our health,
We've got to pull out larder!
our homes, and our family dynamics?
Can't do it anymore. This is what would make a woman break.
To find out, the Robshaws are going to shop, cook and eat their way through history.
It's 1974. Whoa. I think there's enough sugar now, though.
Hardly anyone.
Starting in 1950, their own home will be their time machine.
Oh, my goodness.
This carpet hurts my eyes. Who designed that?
Someone who was colourblind.
Fast-forwarding them through a new year every day, as they experience firsthand the culinary fads, fashions and gadgets of each age. After 4 weeks of time travel through the austere 50s, the swinging 60s and the tasteless 70s,
It's more like fish food.
the family is upping the pace. In the era when technological advances delivered food faster than ever, the 1980s.
Wow. My goodness.
As they discover how our changing relationship with food has shaped all of our lives.
Everyone's eating something different and we're no longer eating together and the microwave is doing it.
A new decade and a new makeover for the Robshaws. It's goodbye to the garish 70s and hello to the gadget-rich family home of the 1980s. The kitchen has opened up and is filled with more cooking appliances than ever before. Food historian Dr. Polly Russell and I are back to see what this decade will unleash on the Robshaws.
Wow, so bright.
Wallpaper, I mean, nostalgic and also grisly.
It's hideous.
And a red plastic table, which, like, you look at it and you think, that's office furniture.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the stuff we had in our house, and we were very tasteful.
It's very sort of power suit, isn't it? Nature is out of this space. And it's all about this sort of display, isn't it?
In pride of place is a kitchen newcomer that sums up the 1980s drive for speed and efficiency.
I'd forgotten that microwaves used to look like that. When this first arrived, people threw out their ovens and put them in.
But it was supposed to be a sort of revolution in home cooking. You were going to be using this as your main way of cooking. That was what was thought.
And when I was a kid, we didn't have one, until quite late, and I thought we were really behind, and I was like, Mum, we've got to get one of these.
Only 6% of homes had a microwave in 1980, but by the end of the decade, half of us had one. Consumer programmes fell over themselves to offer advice on how best to use this newfangled appliance.
The question we're asking this week is whether a microwave is worth buying at all. Now, that depends on which foods it cooks well and which not so well.
The traditional cooker got an 80s update too.
Some sort of ceramic hob.
Ceramic hob. But look good, and you could also touch up your makeup in the reflection if you kept it clean, which was one of its added advantages.
Your massive eyeliner in the 80s.
For the first time, extractor fans come in to...
Really, the first time?
Yeah, and it makes the kitchen a space much more that you can hang out. This is where people were starting to spend most of their time in the home as a family.
No, well, I mean, not everything about the 80s was bad, but they had some things right about design, and it has definitely laid the ground rules for the kitchens today.
Previously, I've given the family an overview of the decade face to face, but this time, the newly invented post-it note can do the job for me. You know the drill. Good luck. Although things would improve for many over the decade, in 1980 Britain was in poor economic shape. New Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had increased interest rates and slashed public spending in an attempt to bring the country's 20% inflation rate under control.
The ladies not for turning.
Her policies were controversial. Traditional heavy industries struggled, and unemployment soared across the country. Despite the 80s' uncertain beginnings, Brandon and Rochelle are stepping back into a decade they remember fondly.
I'm looking forward to going back into the 80s, reliving those years when I was a young adult. I think the 80s is when it all opens out and food starts to become more varied.
It felt like a very glitzy time with lots of glamour and big hair, glossy lipstick. If it looks like sort of a Dallas-style palace, I think I'll be quite pleased. Oh, goodness!
Oh, wow!
Staggered.
What do you think of the telly?
We got a remote.
It's got a remote! So now, for the first time, you can change the channel without getting up.
I have to say that I really don't like it. It's all about getting your things out and putting them on show.
I think it's a great room
Yeah.
for a party.
Ah.
Well, we're not having a party, so...
You never know.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
Do you think
I
so?
love it, yeah. Look at this beautiful table.
We have a microwave.
Where? Oh, yes. My goodness.
That's like the size of a house.
Oh, look, what have we got here, everybody? Could it be a toasted sandwich machine?
I love it.
Now, see, this was an innovation of the 80s. People were eating toasted sandwiches all the time. Somebody that I was at university with, he had one of these up in his rooms and he cooked a rabbit on it.
Oh, for goodness sake. What, in a sandwich?
No, just the rabbit. I don't know if he put it in a sandwich afterwards.
Did you?
Yeah, of course he did. See, this is what was called a filofax.
Oh.
And the bigger your filofax, the more important you were.
So if you had a little baby one.
Nobody would be impressed by that.
So has he just left a note then, Giles?
It must be Giles. You know the drill. Good luck.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, right, so Giles is too busy even to hang around.
You need to hang around.
Rochelle, you'll now be working full-time, which means that there's less time to prepare family meals, but the new technological developments at your disposal should help reduce the time you spend in the kitchen.
As in previous decades, the food the Robshaws will be eating will be guided by the National Food Survey, in which thousands of families recorded what they ate for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Tonight, Rochelle and Miranda are recreating a dinner enjoyed by a Kidderminster family of 4 in November 1980.
Roast chicken, potatoes, vegetables, jam sponge cake.
An explosion of microwave cookbooks encouraged you to cook absolutely everything in it, so the Robshaws are doing just that.
Surely you can't put a whole chicken in it.
It weighs 3.5 pounds
So it's 10 minutes.
per pound. Oh my God, that's so fast.
We've got a roasting bag. Can we put foil on it?
No! Oh my God, are you joking?
Yes.
Good.
Right.
Cooked in a plastic roasting bag, their chicken should be ready in 35 minutes, less than half the time a conventional oven would take.
It says here that always keep the door sill and door surfaces clean. Grease, soil or spatters could result in a leakage of microwave energy from the oven.
At a time when the fear of nuclear war hung in the air, a TV documentary terrified new microwave users by suggesting the machines could pose a radiation risk.
Testing showed that whilst the new ovens leaked negligible amounts, those that had been in continuous use leaked varying amounts up to and above the safety levels.
Many cautious microwave owners bought domestic Geiger counters to check for leaks.
Have to move it along the seals. Oh my God! Look, did you see that? It went right up to high.
Wait, dig in, go up.
See? Look. It went right up to danger. Must be a bit of grease or something.
All right, if you've
Sort
taken
of
away
like-
radiation, be careful of that kitchen paper, kitchen roll. It's all on there.
In fact, the levels of radiation were so low that they were later proved to be totally harmless.
Okay, now shut this.
Yeah, and then...
But making a 1980s roast dinner in the microwave did present some very real problems.
Do you know what's difficult about this?
Yeah.
It's getting everything done at the same time.
Yeah. Strange, isn't it? I reckon that you would probably, like, if you wanted to roast the chicken quickly in the microwave, you might just cook the vegetables on the hob.
I know. It's got to be one thing in and one thing out, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So it hasn't really saved us any time, has it?
The Robshaws' speedy chicken dinner has taken 2.5 hours to prepare. And, following the advice of the time, they resorted to a generous spreading of Marmite to give it that just roasted look.
I'm really fed up. 2.5 hours. With very, very little to show for it, except a chicken that's been covered with Marmite. It doesn't even look attractive.
What is this? There's a bit of cling film. You don't normally get that on a roast chicken, do you? Thank you very much.
So I'm sorry it only took 2.5 hours.
Thanks, ladies. Oh, the hungrier we are, the more we enjoy it.
It's not good.
It's really not.
Listen to this.
I did not enjoy that cooking experience. I don't know how many people would try to cook a whole meal in the microwave like that.
But do you think people just thought, we've got a microwave, we're going to use it?
I'd never do it again.
Let's start with the microwaves. It's funny how the 80s ones can cook a chicken perfectly, but vegetables, they just don't even touch. Like me.
It's a new day, which means a new year for the time-travelling Robshaws.
Whose tea is that?
Mine. I'm not blue.
Then.
Why don't you? Because I'm doing a Rubik's Cube.
Why are you not allowed to wear makeup at school?
Well, I don't care. I'm a sassy rebel.
I'm a sassy rebel.
Kids, do you want to come in for breakfast?
As Brandon and Rochelle are now working full-time, I've sent a classic early 80s gift to speed up their morning routine.
A 1981 coffee cup. You know who it is?
Queen Victoria.
And who else with it?
Jonathan.
Yes, Jonathan and Victoria on the mug. And here it comes.
That's so cool.
Filter coffee machines were the must-have kitchen gadgets of the early 1980s. Nearly 1 million flew off the shelves in 1981 alone.
Do you think this is right?
As people switched from instant to real coffee.
Are you putting the sugar inside?
Rosalind, don't do that. I've never seen that before. Please don't do that.
I think it's a really good idea.
Rosalind!
I think that is enough sugar now, though,
No, I haven't put hardly any on.
It wasn't just at breakfast time that parents struggled to ensure their children ate healthily. In 1980, the government's Education Act abolished minimum nutritional standards for school dinners and allowed private contractors to take over school kitchens. On average, the price of a school lunch surged by 40%, and the number of children taking a packed lunch to school doubled. For busy parents, it meant preparing another meal each day.
Wait, that's not helping. That's not helping.
You know, it's just gone 20 past. They've got about 8 minutes.
Thanks.
The clock is ticking.
I would prefer the children to have a school dinner because that way I could just get straight out to work without having the added sort of worry about what I'm actually putting in their packed lunch. Is there a penguin in there?
There's a parrot.
Chocolate biscuit sales increased by 35% over the decade, and National Food Survey shopping lists show a plethora of unhealthy treats, like this one from a family in Dorset.
Milky Ways, Twix bars, Club biscuits.
In 1981, nearly 2/3 of married women worked, and Rochelle is no exception. Places to go and people to see, she'll be delighted by the latest lunchtime innovation. The pre-packed sandwich. I've come to a Marks & Spencer's factory to discover how a humble salmon and tomato sandwich spawned a £6 billion industry and transformed lunchtime forever.
Let us test it. So this is not a filling that you have anymore at all?
No, unfortunately, salmon and tomatoes bit in the dust. But that was the first sandwich. The story has it that a store manager took some cafe sandwiches, wrapped them, took them down into the food hall, Customers loved them. There began the pre-packed sandwich. And from that day, the growth of the sandwich, the pre-packed sandwich, was phenomenal. By 1984, we had 4 factories making sandwiches. Now sell 92.5 million sandwiches a year.
Just by accident?
Almost by accident.
That is just really quite something of a sandwich.
That is a superb 1980s sandwich.
I think this sandwich would stand up in any era. Do you think the way people live changed because the sandwich was invented, or was the sandwich invented to facilitate the way that they had changed anyway?
I guess it's the whole chicken and egg story. But
chicken and egg, that's a good sandwich. Do you have one of those?
Egg with mayonnaise. Certainly the pre-packed sandwiches for lunch revolutionised people's lunch hours.
Like all 1980s food innovations, the packeted sandwich was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it gave people more freedom. They didn't have to go home to have their lunch. They didn't have to waste time in the morning packing their food for themselves. On the other hand, it did chain them to their desks. It did contribute to the breakdown of the whole idea of a lunch break. It desocialised the lunch, and it made the office much more of a prison. So I don't really know which way Rochelle's going to take it.
This was at reception.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
Let me know if you think it will take off. It's still novel.
Excellent. Are you going to share this lunch?
I'm going to share this lunch.
Lovely. Look forward to it.
Unless it's really nice, I might eat it myself. Look.
Sandwiches, lovely.
In a box. Look at that. That's the original one. And the prawn mayo is the 1981's bestseller. Isn't it amazing, though, to think that that was novel, to get a sandwich in a package?
I mean, that is very much the working woman, isn't it? Grabbing a sandwich on the way into work.
Yeah. It's nice to have something made. But of this innocent packaged sandwich, didn't know what it was going to bring in, did it?
In 1981, the average lunch break was an hour long. Today, it's only 29 minutes. It's 1982, and Fred is embracing the latest craze to hit British shores. In the early 80s, children played outside for more than 2 hours a day, double the amount they do today.
Look at my skills!
I've sent some new gadgets that were making an impact indoors as well.
There's this. What is that?
The arrival of a VCR means the Robshaws are joining the lucky 13% of households who can record TV programmes to watch when they want.
There's something else as well. A soda stream.
Oh, this is so cool. How does it work?
Soda streams injected sparkle into the kitchen, showing food could be fun. With Brandon and Rochelle at work, the girls are inviting friends round for a video party.
Again. 3. Yeah.
Wow, we did it.
You can hear the bubbles. You can hear the bubbles.
I don't know, can you?
Yeah.
Their party menu is inspired by National Food Survey entries of the time.
Okay, we're going to make toasted sandwiches. Yes. Oven chips, popcorn. This is going to be so good. It's going to be the best party ever. We haven't done chips yet.
No, Mum made chips cooked in lard, but we only got 8 each.
No, 8 altogether.
8 altogether. so it was. They were quite grim. They didn't taste very nice, and they were a lot of hard work.
Introduced in 1979, oven chips helped to cut the number of domestic chip pan fires in half in only 10 years. And today they make up 3/4 of all the chips we cook at home.
And considering what we've been eating, this is quite fashionable food. Yeah. And it's all food that you need special equipment to make.
This is like Fred's heaven.
Why?
In here. It's got a toaster machine.
Soda stream.
It's got a soda stream. It's got everything he wants. He could live in here.
Yeah, but it's so easy as well.
I guess, does that mean we're losing the art of cookery?
Oh. Yeah, I guess so. They look good.
Rochelle will get home from work too late to have any say about the food the girls are making.
I can see now at this point how having more gadgets and processed food and the microwave is actually helping me, you know, whether it provides the good enough food within the home is probably not the case, but it's certainly enabling me to have a life outside of the home.
Back home, the girls are serving up 80s treats and entertainment to their guests.
The interesting thing is that we needed loads and loads of gadgets to make all this food. Would you like the presentation?
Oh, it's great. I love this.
I think in the 80s it's a lot more about showing off, a lot less practicality and a lot more show.
A bit like the hair.
Would you like a toasty?
The cheese is quite bright orange.
That's the 80s for you. Everything's bright orange.
But this 1982 party is about to get a lot more stylish.
The spectacular ice cream dessert called Viennetta. But despite
Before 1982, ice cream usually came in simple blocks or tubs. Viennetta changed all that. This was convenience food at its most sophisticated.
Wall's Viennetta. One slice is never enough.
Nobody could do that. So I guess before it became kind of old-fashioned, it must have been like a really cool thing.
Hello. Oh my goodness me! Wow, that looks really nice. You've got a Viennetta there.
Yeah.
And what are you watching? Who's on it?
I don't really know.
Who are these people? Your brother and sister?
Their hair says yes, but their face says no.
I think the Viennetta should have stayed in the freezer. Because I think that's dinner party food.
Yeah, we should tell them off about that.
Yeah, that's like sort of breaking into the sherry. I wish I'd been home earlier to make them something healthier.
You've got a job. I've got a job. Why are you the one feeling guilty and not me?
That's the way it goes.
Is this like food that we would eat all the time? Or there's nothing green apart from the sweets, and I don't think they count. Yeah, I don't feel very well.
No. It was nice just to be able to use the kitchen more freely. The food we made did feel kind of like fairly cutting edge, actually. I just think it was because we had to use so many gadgets to make it.
It's 1983, and Britons are waking up to the fact that the 80s diet and lifestyle might not be terribly healthy.
Wake up! Shape up!
It's the Green Goddess.
Let's get Britain fit! Anybody else who'd like to join us, do come and take it. Can we do it?
Although only 7% of the population was obese in 1983, compared to 24% today, Britain's health and waistline was a national talking point.
2, 1, do this.
Right, everyone make sure they've got plenty of room.
Like to join us? Anybody stand?
Exercise was only one weapon in the battle to shift Britain's bulge. Dieting was a national obsession.
2:15, please, Eddie. Chris, you know you're not supposed to have beer, don't you?
Yes.
Don't think next week that you can do the same for 2 weeks, you know. You can't. You've had your holiday, forget it.
The Robshaws have got their own taskmaster to inspire them.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Polly.
Oh, welcome to the 80s. So this decade is where health, exercise and dieting take off. And so today we're going to be splitting you into 2 teams. One team is going to be eating the grapefruit diet. The other team is going to be eating the F-Plan diet.
The grapefruit diet advocated a low-calorie, high-protein approach, plus half a grapefruit with each meal, which would allegedly help burn off the pounds. The best-selling F-Plan endorsed a diet low in fat and high in fibre.
Why do you think these diets became sort of so popular at this point?
It's this decade of contrasts, really, where people are eating more convenience foods and doing less exercise and are putting on more weight. On the other hand, people are really obsessing about diets.
In the teenage magazines, there's almost like an assumption that you're going to be slimming.
In this period, what you see is a real sort of explosion of the dieting, exercise and health industries. So the publishing diet industry explodes during this time. Slimming clubs, slimming magazines, 10 titles during the 80s, about 24 bestseller titles for diets. So there's a kind of explosion of the industry fueling concerns about diet and health.
By 1983, Britain's diet industry was worth a hefty £350 million a year, nearly triple its value only 5 years earlier. And supermarket shelves bulged with new low-calorie goods as the food industry saw profit in the growing waistline some of its own products had helped to create.
Very tart. I'm not allowed to put sugar on it, am I?
No, that's not the diet.
And oh gosh.
I actually think that it makes your ears tingle.
What are we getting last one? Well, we get a lot of fibre. The portions may be smaller, but you are full. You don't feel as hungry.
If it's brown, get down.
Do you mind? Don't finish my breakfast.
But I seem to remember somebody, a journalist back in the 80s, writing about the F-plan diet. I think it might have been Anne Robinson, and she said that every...
From the Weakest Link?
Yeah, and she said every copy of the F-plan diet should come with a can of air freshener.
To work up an appetite for their next delicious diet meal, the Robshaws are getting physical in classic early 80s style. When a pair of velour shorts was more essential than a crash helmet. And music on the move was a novelty.
I used to think, actually, that joggers running along with their headphones in were slightly comical figures, really. I thought they were figures of fun. And now I'm one.
Good. I don't like it.
It's back to the kitchen for dinner. Rochelle's using another 80s gadget to open her baked beans for the F-plan shepherd's pie.
Yeah. But, oh, God, look at that go. How'd you stop it? God. Blimey.
And Brandon's rustling up an omelette.
You don't need to put milk in an omelette.
You can't do that.
Why not?
It's not on your diet. You can't add that to that.
But I can have as much butter as I like to fry this in.
So you won't be overweight, you'll just die of a heart attack.
Food packaging wasn't required to carry nutritional information, so the guidelines of diets like the F-plan were the only advice people got.
If you look at the label right, this doesn't say too much, does it?
So you would eat that and not know that it's got loads of calories in it.
That's it.
There's an awful lot more food, but there's very little guidance, so people might be a bit confused, and that's why they'd overeat and then have to go on sort of extreme diets like the grapefruit one.
It would be 1990 before nutritional labelling on food became mandatory.
I think that this grapefruit plan diet is just a fad. I don't really feel it's filling me up. I actually feel I'd like to have pie and chips now.
Right.
Yeah, that was... Oh, the diet was... I do need a can of air freshener.
Another day, and I'm sending the Robshaws yet more kitchen kit from the decade of conspicuous consumption. Courtesy of 1984's top TV chef.
Brandon.
Oh, wow.
No. Certainly am.
We've got a special guest. We've got Mr. Ken Hall.
Nice to meet you. It's very nice to meet you.
Hello, how are you? You're too young to remember who I am.
And I see you've brought the wok.
Oh, I thought I'd give you something for your new kitchen.
Fantastic.
In the 80s.
Yeah, completely new piece of equipment.
Ken Hom and his wok introduced TV audiences to a whole new style of cooking.
These types of woks are best used on a gas hob. Now, if you have an electric cooker, you must use a flat-bottom wok like this.
I mean, what was it about the 1980s that kind of made the British public ready for these new techniques?
People were beginning to actually entertain
Yeah.
at home. And one of the ways of doing that, I guess, showing off, is either making it Indian or Chinese. I mean, that would really impress
And your
them.
guests would be impressed.
Oh, they would be.
Today, Brandon and Ken are stir-frying chicken marinated in soy sauce and ginger.
We add... Yes, exactly.
That is such a fantastic noise, though.
Yeah, but this is why I think men really love cooking Chinese. Because there's action. It's instant gratification.
Yes.
I think when you see how it starts browning immediately...
You can watch it cook in front of your eyes, can't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have never cooked a complete Chinese meal in this house. We've never cooked it. We've had them as takeaways. We've been to restaurants, but we have never cooked a Chinese meal here.
It's not. It's
So
like
this is completely new. It's not a takeaway.
No, it's not.
In fact, we've taken away the chef.
You're so funny, Mum.
It smells so nice.
Looking back on this experiment through the decades, I think British eating has got progressively more interesting, more ambitious, and better. Simple as that.
Oh my goodness!
Help yourself to some rice. How would you say bon appetit in Cantonese?
You would say sik fan. Eat rice.
Absolutely delicious.
Chinese was the perfect cuisine for the show-off amateur chef of the 1980s.
People started cooking this on Saturday nights for friends. It showed that they were hip and they were able to cross sort of cultural boundaries.
And you can see how it sort of becomes a hobby. It's something that people just do for pleasure.
This country has taken to it. Chinese is as British now as fish and chips.
Today I had a fantastic experience of cooking with Ken Hom. This kind of cooking, it's really kind of satisfying and rewarding and quite an exciting way to cook, you know, all the action and smoke and sizzle.
It's 1985, and while some of the country was still struggling economically, in the city of London, good times have well and truly arrived.
The number of flashy sports cars in the city shows there's a good deal of new wealth around.
For those with cash to splash on dining out, there was really only one cuisine.
Hello.
Hello, mate. How are you? You in the mood for a slap-up lunch?
I'd absolutely love it, yeah. Couldn't ask for anything better.
I'm currently inside Mosselmans, the inventor of Nouvelle Cuisine, or Cuisine Naturelle, and a huge deal in the 80s. Do you have any nice clothes?
I think I could dig something out, yeah.
All right, I'll see you later. Cheers, Brandon. Bye.
You heard that was Giles.
Yes, I did.
And he's invited us out for a slap-up meal in a really posh restaurant. We're going up the dark blue end of the Monopoly board.
The Nouvelle Cuisine movement revolutionised British fine dining. It emphasised its ingredients' delicate colours and flavours in beautifully presented but tiny portions, a complete contrast to the richly sauced, heavy French cooking that had gone before.
The terrace room at the Dorchester is a foodie's place of pilgrimage. Here, Anton Mosselman has created the menu surprise, the surprise being that it'll knock you back about £57.
Well, let's say cheers. To the 80s, then.
Cheers.
I'm sorry I couldn't be with you for the whole of it. I was really only available for the things which involved drinking champagne. Michelin 2-star meals.
Do I take one or...?
It's the decade of consumption. You take them all. And hang the rest of us.
Send out for another one.
You know how he gets all that taste in a tiny parcel like that? It's absolutely amazing.
That's the key to Nouvelle Cuisine. Lots and lots of flavour in a tiny, tiny, tiny little portion. That's all you're getting. Yeah, you have another glass of champagne and we're off. People always had a cheeseburger on the way home in those days.
Nouvelle Cuisine was unaffordable to most, but the ingredients it introduced, like kiwi fruit, goat's cheese and mange tout, have trickled down to become supermarket staples, and its fiddly presentation is now the norm.
This sort of plating, it wouldn't think, whoa, that's so 80s, because that's what we think of as presentation now. Right. And then all these fresh herbs, which they didn't tend to have then. I mean, he's got the dill and the flat parsley. Flat parsley was totally new then. We thought it was curly. It's healthy and also it's showing off. It's the best of both worlds for the 80s.
So he really did sort of change the game, didn't he?
It's very distinctive, like each individual vegetable. I don't think he's boiled them all together. I mean, I think it seems like they're...
Oh, I think you can afford several pots.
Yes, I think so, yeah. It was small because it was prepared in this really very fine, thoughtful way. But that was possibly of less interest to those people who had masses of money to spend on it.
The phrase you're grasping for there is more money than sense.
Yes.
About these people, isn't it? I mean, food was terrific and people are there just because it's expensive, just so they can show off. I'm sitting here feeling no guilt at all, but I suspect you two are probably feeling, as you chuck into this meal, that not everyone is having it so good in 1985.
Well, I kind of do feel I wish everybody could have eaten like this, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Wow. My goodness.
Blimey.
While some were dining on the finest of dishes in 1985, others were struggling to put food on the table.
Not to cross the picket lane.
By 1985, many of Britain's miners had been on strike with no pay or benefits for nearly a year. And for some, things were getting desperate.
This is a divided community, scarred by bitterness, envy and acrimony, where neighbour is pitted against neighbour and even father against son. The reason? Some miners have full pay packets and eat well, continue to pay off the mortgage. Other miners have virtually no money. Soup kitchens provide what for some is the only meal of the day.
Certainly remember seeing it on the news and quite violent demonstrations.
It's when you're hungry, you're angry, aren't you?
Yeah, because it just reminds me of when we looked at the National Food Survey for the 1950s, a woman had written in it, a hungry man is an angry man.
Brandon's uncles were miners, and he's keen to help Rochelle prepare a dish that a miner's wife cooked for her family in 1985.
Tatty pot. Potatoes, onions, carrots, corned beef, dumplings.
The word that springs to mind?
Yes.
It's humbling.
Of course I did. I mean, I did kind of know about it. I went to marches and things. I dropped money in the buckets. I wore the badges. But I just feel that I didn't really... I just let it pass me by, really. I was just leading my own kind of merry, selfish little life. I don't think I paid enough attention to it. I don't think I actually had an uncle involved in that strike, and I don't think I was nearly supportive enough. I want to ask you about these dumplings, because I've never made dumplings before. And it said mix with water. And now this seems to me very kind of gooey and sloppy. So I don't know if I put in too much water or not enough.
I think you've put in too much water.
Too much. So I think the only way to remedy that is going to be to add some more suet and some more flour.
Really?
If you eat this, you won't wake up hungry in the middle of the night, will you?
No, I won't wake up at all.
Miranda, Rose, Fred.
These dumplings aren't too bad.
Do you think they were going to be horrible?
I feared that they might be. This is the kind of food they used to cook during the miners' strike.
Through rationing at the beginning, in the 50s, we ate meals like this, and up in Sunderland, or those sort of mining communities, had to go back to sort of eating, being clever with what they had.
It's all kind of, you know, quite not expensive food, but it's very kind of fills you up.
It's nice.
Nice. What's it called?
Tatty pot. 1980s really was a decade of polar opposites. You've got people on strike who are really, really hard up, and then at the opposite kind of end of the spectrum, you know, you've got this decade of conspicuous consumption where people are just really, really enjoying spending their not particularly hard-earned money.
Talking of money, 1986 is the year of the Big Bang. And the city is filling up with go-getting, shoulder-pad-wearing, mobile phone-toting entrepreneurs, ready to seize the opportunities presented by financial deregulation. Even women are welcome.
You think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and
Today, Miranda's sampling the joys of 80s city life in the offices of one of the decade's highest financial flyers, Nicola Horlick.
What was the atmosphere?
It's phenomenally exciting. American banks came in and bought up our banks. It became much more professional. Everything was changing. The pace was incredibly fast. And, you know, the Americans have a reputation for being hard taskmasters. Things like the boozy city lunch went out of the window. The consequence of people not going out for boozy lunches was that they were eating sandwiches at their desks.
Luckily, by 1986, there were 25 varieties of sandwich filling to choose from. With the lunch break fast disappearing, city restaurants were struggling. Many reinvented themselves as wine bars, and a new generation of bankers lapped them up.
Champagne lifestyle is possible at an earlier age in the city than anywhere else.
I've asked Miranda and Nicola to join me and my friend Ben, a trader in 1986, for an evening at one of the city's original wine bars.
Was champagne the thing that you drank in the city?
If you had something to celebrate, but there was a lot to celebrate.
I remember when Ben went into the city and then Ben just had all this cash and champagne. I thought he was a bit flash.
That was the idea. Money was a way of saying, look, I'm really good at my job. It was a kind of status symbol.
Fine champagnes and wines were the ultimate in aspirational drinking.
Cheers, anyway.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers.
To the 80s.
But teetotalers weren't left out.
How come I've got sparkling water?
You can't have this because you're only 17. And that is also a celebratory, emblematic 1980s drink. Perrier was quite a big status symbol. Everything had to be, you know, flashy and fizzy and bubbly and sparkling.
I don't think we actually had Perrier in the meeting rooms at that point. We just had water.
What, because it was, like, so special?
Well, it was so special.
If you'd gone back to your 1950s and 60s versions of yourselves in the house and said, yeah, we're up in the 80s, it's great, we're buying water, they'd have thought you were mad.
Fancy wines and bottled water may have started out being enjoyed by the wealthy few, but their influence quickly flowed into all our homes.
They're very fiddly, aren't they, these wine boxes? But very hard to get it out. Oh, you can tear it up a bit there, can't you? Ah, it's like a sort of breech birth, isn't it? Ah!
God, you're not a midwife.
Look at that. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Oh, there's little Ginny.
Oh, yeah. Jill Goulden. I used to really like the way she described the taste of drinks. This tastes like a summer breeze blowing through a field of golden corn, that kind of thing.
Bit of wood, bit of tobacco, pencil sharpenings, the works. It's absolutely terrific.
Wine drinking was viewed as upwardly mobile, and TV helped demystify it for an aspirational public. And between 1980 and 1987, Britain's wine consumption rose by 50%.
Suddenly became accessible just to drink a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Because we've kind of got used to
Got
having
used to
it
not doing that.
with food, haven't we? You're not just sort of
Yeah.
necking it.
Yeah. To sit down at night on the sofa with a glass of wine and watching the telly just seems, you know, a kind of very self-indulgent sort of luxury, which is now freely available in the 80s and would have seemed very strange and kind of a little bit wrong, I think, in previous decades.
It's 1987 and the Robshaws are off to the supermarket to meet food historian Polly Russell to discover how a transformation in food packaging over the decade revolutionised what was available on the shelves.
The thing about food packaging is it seems rather boring, it seems rather everyday, but actually it is the unsung hero of food processing and food change in this period. And without it, many of the foods we enjoy today would simply not be possible.
One of the biggest innovations is found in the drinks aisle.
Are you surprised to see fizzy soft drinks on the list for the 1980s?
Well, I'm surprised in the sense that my mum wouldn't normally let us have Coke.
The plastic packaging is new. In fact, we haven't really seen anything in like, drinks in bottles, really.
The plastic bottle is called a PET piece of packaging. It's only developed in the 1980s, and this is what makes this possible, this huge new explosion of drinking soft drinks.
Lighter than glass and virtually unbreakable, PET helped put more fizzy drinks on supermarket shelves, and sales more than doubled over the decade. In 1987, another food technology breakthrough gave birth to the ultimate fast food, the microwavable ready meal.
In this sort of box is a sort of revolution, really, in food processing and food technology, because for the first time you can buy a completely made meal and it can be yours to eat in the matter of 3-4 minutes.
So why is it now that in the mid to late 80s that these ready meals are coming in?
You have to have your cold chain, so you have to have your refrigeration from manufacture, your supermarket, and of course at home. Unlike frozen food, which can be sort of held at any temperature below a certain temperature, this has to be held within quite narrow margins.
Cooked at the factory, chilled ready meals need to be held at between 1 and 4 degrees to avoid the risk of food poisoning. A technological leap that only became possible in the 1980s.
Cheeky little lasagna.
And of course it emphasises the speed. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Market research at the time, people put convenience way ahead of price, nutritional value and even taste. So you have the packaging developed in the late 80s, which allows this to be microwavable or ovenable.
So it's like the microwave has actually kind of found its moment now. Choose one of those.
Well, I think I'll just go with chicken curry.
We close the door, we press time, but what it means is that we can all eat something different.
Yeah, and it's easy to eat something different. You don't have to, like, cook loads of different things.
No, that's right.
I feel a bit sad.
Why?
Because like, everyone's eating something different and we're no longer eating together. We
No.
can't all sit round here with these little packets.
Well, also, we're all eating at different times, because you can't put them all in at once.
Oh, Fred, just... Like,
can I eat now?
Yes, eat. Just eat.
But look, I'll tell you what's good. Watch this. No washing up. How's that?
Well, you would if you had a plate, wouldn't you?
You've just put a lot of plastic and stuff in the bin.
Yeah.
Which isn't really good.
It's pretty much the first time anything's made to be disposable. Kind of, almost.
But that's not actually a good thing.
I'm going to go and play Nintendo.
Throughout this experiment, we have all eaten together. This is the first evening, the very first evening, when everybody is eating differently. You're standing up, they're sitting over there, Fred's in the other room.
But you do gain inconvenience. It's quite
But
nice.
what is the convenience? We're all sort of dispersed and displaced. And the microwave is doing it. Coming home and then sort of feeding that to the family, I felt was kind of soulless. This was, in some ways, my least favourite meal of the experiment. It just felt completely sterile.
It's 5 weeks since the Robshaws began their time travelling. Tonight, Brandon and Rochelle are taking inspiration from the excesses of the 80s and wowing her boss with a complex Nouvelle Cuisine-inspired dinner party.
Oh, my goodness me.
Goat's cheese and spinach tart, accompanied by a green salad with raspberry coulis.
Ooh.
I see.
Oh, my goodness, so it's not dessert. That's actually...
Yeah, that's part of the...
Goat's cheese and... Oh. Oh, Brandon, this is going to be really bad because we're going to sort of be annoying each other, aren't we? Yeah. I think we need to take different sort of different.
We should each have different stations.
Yeah, yeah. I'll go to Walthamstow Central. Get on the train.
I'll go to Liverpool Street.
The menu includes many ingredients which are widely available for the first time. For the main course, they're poaching a whole Scottish salmon, now affordable because of a step up in salmon farming. This is served with a trio of vegetables pureed in their new Magimix, a must-have for the aspirational home chef.
Suddenly there's a new type of food, isn't there? There's a new type of way, a new way of eating and preparing food, isn't it?
Thinking about the dinner we had at Mosselman's, the whole thing was designed to be impressive. And I suppose we're kind of trying to do that in the home a bit, aren't we?
Yeah,
to show off, not just that we can afford it, but that we've got the knowledge and the expertise to be able to do this kind of food.
Yes. It's a bit show-offy.
And in the decade of speed, ostentatious dishes showed the hosts had used the most precious 80s commodity to make their meal. Time.
It's just so fiddly. It's maddening. I mean, also, does this even look like fish scales, or does it look like somebody's put a load of cucumber on a fish?
While Rochelle and Brandon discover the joys of nouvelle cuisine, the children are embracing new trends of their own.
Oh. It's my go now, so give me the controller. Give me the controller.
Wait until I
Stop
die.
it! Right, I'm not playing with you.
Greedy. I'm not greedy.
You're greedy and selfish, and as soon as a piece of technology comes here, you're into a different person.
Mario is amazing. But I do notice that we're not going outside as much anymore.
Hi, kids. Look, you know, we've got some guests coming round tonight, Mum's work colleagues. So is it all right if you lot go out while they're here? Enjoy yourselves.
Getting a small bowl and piling as much as you could.
While her guests reminisce about the joy of the all-you-can-eat buffet, Rochelle's plating up her show-off starter.
Oh, God. Oh, bugger. It's not quite cooked on the pastry bit, so this will be nouvelle portions. How could I have done this? That's just horrible.
You? Oh, that looks very nouvelle, doesn't it?
Thank you.
It really does. Lovely, thank you.
So goat's cheese and... Yeah, so goat's cheese
and spinach tart. Yeah, goat's cheese had reached, you know, the kind of the normal household.
And that does ring bells.
Alarm bells.
And alarm bells.
I thought it was a very nice starter myself, but they didn't actually say, oh, wow, that was delicious, did they?
No. What did you think of the presentation?
Beautiful. Absolutely a picture.
What did you think of the...
I'd put that in the take gallery any time.
You don't have to take the piss. But
They look really pretty. Right, let's go and show them this then.
Wow. Amazing. It's really, really impressive.
It's a bit like doing a jigsaw.
Yes.
Impressing their guests means Rochelle and Brandon are too busy to keep an eye on what the kids are scoffing when they're not looking. Chains like Burger King and McDonald's had arrived in the mid-70s, but it was in the 80s that Britain became a fast food nation. McDonald's ended the decade with over 400 branches. With burgers costing less than £1.20, the meals were dished up at pocket money prices, and fast food chains became a popular after-school hangout for a whole generation.
I hadn't missed it until I ate it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
It is nice that you can, I don't know, just like nip out and get some whatever you want now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I almost like prefer the 50s more because now I can just get sweets whenever I want. With the 50s, I was getting excited when I got a packet of sweets. So it's like, all changed now.
The food and lifestyle of the 80s led to childhood obesity rates doubling over the decade.
Creme brulee? No.
It is, you're
It is
right.
creme brulee. Oh, my goodness, wow. Very impressive.
I can start to smell that caramelised sugar now. That's
I
lovely.
think you're doing something right. It smells incredible.
What a gadget.
Chicken, everybody. Yeah. So if this was the 80s and you'd come round to dinner and we'd served you this up, would you think, wow, Rochelle, we've got to find her an important role in our organisation as quickly as possible?
Well, no. Why not?
But tonight, there were no filters, no checks. At midnight, the border was thrown open and the crowd surged through the open gates.
Oh, Berlin Wall! It's fantastic to see these pictures, isn't it? Was it a real kind of great optimistic way to end the decade of the 80s, wasn't it?
I got a bit of the wall. There's that bit there.
The decade's winding up, but there's just time for one final surprise.
Hello, Giles.
Hello.
Hi there.
Nice to see you.
Hello, chaps.
You can come perch up
We've
here.
got a good place
Oh, really?
to perch
Yes.
there, yeah.
You couldn't have shuffled up a little bit?
No.
Typical selfish 80s behaviour. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
How's the 80s been?
It's been very eventful and very enjoyable. The wall's come down, so I think that's...
The Berlin Wall?
Yeah.
What better way could there possibly be to celebrate the end of communism than a pizza delivery?
Oh, yes, get it.
That's an exciting thing, isn't it? Is this the first food you've had delivered, then, in your journey through the ages?
Yes, it is. We've had takeaway before. We've had fish and chips, but we had to go and get that ourselves.
Oh, how incredibly 70s and backwards.
Pizza Hut and Domino's started home deliveries as the decade drew to a close. This was the perfect incarnation of the 80s love of speed and choice.
Hey, what do you think this is, a takeaway service?
Pick up the phone and you've got it made.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
How was the 80s for you?
It's been sort of quite an exciting time, but sort of working full-time now, I find it pretty hard going. It's a great pity not to have as much family time.
Has there, to any extent, the new convenience foods of the 80s made it possible?
Yeah, we've had a number of ready meals, pierce the film, pop them in the microwave, all done in sort of 5 minutes. So that's been a complete change.
So the family are all in here, but the real hands-on cooking isn't. So have you lost anything?
It has become a bit sort of atomised. People wander into the kitchen and get what they want and wander out again. On the plus side, I quite like the fact that the kids can get in the kitchen and on occasion they fix things for themselves.
So there's generally more independence, more free will, which is how we're led to remember the 80s.
I think it's like a sort of revolution that's been gathering pace in the 60s and then in the 70s, and it really hits its stride in the 80s.
Come with pizza.
Whoa. No. My word.
That's your one.
Oh, they are thick, these slices, aren't they?
Wow.
I must say, I'm enjoying this pizza. I think it's a fitting culmination to the 80s.
I'm just going to have another slice.
Fast walk?
Yeah.
I can see why people would have eaten more takeaway food in the 80s. I think it would have been pretty cool to have food that wasn't made by you or your family. But it's not exactly the healthiest of foods.
Do you think there's a danger with all of this here? There's going to be an obesity crisis. You're going to eat more than you need.
I feel that as long as this stuff is in front of me, I probably will keep eating.
Well, that seems a suitable ending to the decade. I've left them sitting in front of a screen, eating processed food out of cardboard boxes in their laps, not talking to each other, which basically tells you all you need to know about what happened in the 80s. I think they're beginning to get a sense of all the things they've lost.
I do like the independence of being able to choose what you eat and when, but I guess we do miss the family meal times.
I think there is a bit less love going into everyday food, and that's perhaps one of the regrettable changes.
As somebody who's out at work full-time, I can sort of see that my power to control what they are eating at home has now gone. The gadgets and the convenience food has helped me on my route to sort of liberation. And I suppose sometimes liberation comes at a cost.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. We've got to pull out harder.
Next week, the Robshaws enter the 1990s, the era of cheap and plentiful food.
I don't believe
all different varieties of cheese. It's a wall of
the Great Wall of Cheese. It's probably visible from space.
With a nasty aftertaste.
Is that beef we're eating?
Yeah. It's a bit of a gamble, isn't it?
BBC Two's On the Road. Dara and Ed's great big adventure takes them through Costa Rica to Panama and Colombia next. It's comedy in an hour, and with no sign of a UK visa, Farouk goes on strike in Bluestone for 2. Whilst over on BBC One now, a fling with the boss's teenage daughter has dire consequences in Ordinary Lies.